The Safe Schools Action Team was first established by the Minister of Education in 2004 to carry out research about school climate and safety and to offer advice about how to create welcoming, inclusive, and therefore successful schools. This is Jamie, and I will be discussing the report of the Safe Schools Actions Team. Since 2004, this team has been involved in initiatives such as bullying prevention and action plans, the school climate survey creation and implementation, and the creation of policy and program memorandums for issues such as progressive discipline, suspension, and community support initiatives. The Safe Schools Action Team report has based its recommendations and goals on the idea that students are more able and more motivated to do well and achieve their full potential in schools that have a positive school climate and in which they feel safe and supported. The Safe Schools Action Team was re-engaged in February of 2008 by the Minister of Education in order to review the issues of gender-based violence, homophobia, sexual harassment, and inappropriate sexual behavior that exist in Ontario schools. The result is this report that makes recommendations to the Minister of Education in all Ontario schools to prevent and address gender-based violence, homophobia, sexual harassment, and inappropriate sexual behavior by students towards other students. Research was conducted in consultation with the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH, education stakeholders, and community representatives such as police, public health personnel, diverse cultural groups, special needs advocacy groups, crisis centers, sexual assault centers, and agencies that support LGBTQ youth. Findings have shown that bullying and harassment can be severe, persistent, and pervasive to such a degree that it limits students' ability to participate in or benefit from an education program. Such abuse creates an educational environment that is hostile or threatening for students. Based on the report from the Safe Schools Action Team, recommendations were made in 10 areas in order to improve the school climate, specifically around the areas of gender-based violence, homophobia, sexual harassment, and inappropriate sexual behaviors in schools. This first recommendation was an overall recommendation, specifically around the various curricula in Ontario. Firstly, with the idea of curriculum, the idea was that people should continue to revise with examples of gender, sexual, homophobia, and healthy relationship issues, and integrate the curriculum into other subjects across the curriculum, but specifically around the ideas of media literacy, choosing media articles and titles that have those issues in them. Additionally, the curricula was expected or recommended to be bilingual, ensure that it's also taught to special education students, breaking up the health and physical education into 2 marks instead of 1, and adding a particular focus on these issues with students from grades 6 to 9. The next area of recommendation was around partnerships with community agencies and organizations. It was suggested that they should be working together more with more collaboration. Public health units must be allowed to enter any public school to teach their public health curriculum, and contact lists of agencies must be provided to schools and created by schools for support for students. The next area is around prevention, awareness raising, and intervention. So when it comes to this, the recommendations that were made were all incidents must be addressed and dealt with. If they are reported, they needed to be addressed and dealt with. Resources should be provided to the schools, and these resources should be provided by the school boards and the ministry. School-based opportunities for teaching can occur around areas of character education, gay-straight alliances, and using awareness-raising strategies as well. Finally, anonymous climate surveys of students should be happening regularly, and the results of those surveys should be used to inform school improvement plans, specifically around the area of student wellness. The next area was with regards to response and supports. So the recommendations included outside supports and agencies should be made to available to students who need to use it. All allegations and concerns that get made must be taken seriously and must be dealt with. And school boards should be providing training for staff and outline schools' roles for families so that families are aware what roles do the schools have when it comes to these issues. Finally, the ministry must put policy into place for staff to follow and ensure that that policy is actually being followed. The next area of recommendation was around the idea of reporting. So firstly, all staff must remember that it is always their duty to report if they have any concerns about a student's safety, and that should continue to be enforced. Additionally, if a staff is witness of any behavior or any incident that is suspendable or expellable, then they must report that incident to the principal, and then the principal must report back to the staff what their actions will be. Finally, families must be informed whether they're the victim or the perpetrator of any incidents that have happened. And if for some reason the victim and perpetrator need to be separated, whether it's schools or classes, then the priority must be made that the victim stays where they are and the perpetrator is moved. The next area of recommendation is around the idea of collaboration between local police and school boards and their protocols. In some areas around the province, this was a really strong piece, and then in other areas, there was very minimal collaboration between the two groups. So it was recommended that collaboration is improved across the province for stakeholders, and reviewing and raising awareness of the provincial model for local police or school board protocol should also occur. The next area is around student leadership. It's really important that the recommendations suggested that students have a voice in prevention and intervention strategies, and that all secondary schools should have a mandate to have a Gay Straight Alliance club. The next area for improvement is the parent and family engagement section. Similar to students, families must also feel that they have a voice in the process and be given opportunities to be engaged in the process around strategies in this area. So training was a really big area of recommendation, mostly because all the other things that were mentioned earlier require some training for staff. So training could include things like sensitivity training and effective intervention strategies for all staff. Another area for training would be around the new health curriculum so that staff are aware of what to teach and what not to teach, and using other outside agencies as their experts. It was also suggested that the creation of an additional qualification or AQ course in safe schools could be created, and training for staff so that would be provided to help support students with special needs so that they're also receiving the information they need. And finally, principals are having to investigate more concerns that are brought to them that are suspendable or expellable. So support needs to be given to those principals so that they have an understanding of how they can appropriately investigate those concerns. The last area of recommendation was around evaluation and accountability to ensure that these recommendations are taking place. So the first was that the ministry must evaluate whether those safe schools procedures and policies are actually effective and whether they're working, and whether school boards are following through on them as well. And finally, as mentioned earlier, those school climate surveys must be used and then be used effectively to change up the school improvement plan. So in conclusion, this document has played a large role in changing a number of policies and procedures in Ontario schools. The recommendations have either begun to be followed in schools or efforts continue to be underway to follow through on them. For example, we are in our third year of completing school climate surveys with our students, and those results are used to inform decisions around student wellness in our school improvement plan. Reporting of incidents to principals now have a form that must be completed, and principals have a follow-up form that must be filled out to show which actions they've taken. Every secondary school is mandated to have Gay Straight Alliance clubs, and student leaders have a much stronger voice in programming and strategies to promote safer schools. Finally, the health and physical education curriculum has been radically modified with 2 marks, one in physical education and one in health, along with modified human development and sexual health expectations. Although the document is now almost 10 years old, its effects are still felt every day in schools in Ontario. Thank you.